So that's the elbow flick for me to go on ahead here on Jupiter Road with two guys up the road. Now I'm going to give you some advice here. Group riding 201. If you don't know the route, don't go on a breakaway. That's just... Now, the reason why it's group ride 201 and not 101 is because the guys in 101 cannot do a breakaway off the front of the group. So you got to be strong enough to make the 201 level. Anyway, two guys off the front, neither familiar with the ride. It was good to have them on the ride while they were on the ride. Always good to have strong, experienced riders on the ride, but Gary and Joe, that's the last we saw of them as they did not make the right-hand turn. I was on the front, somewhat reluctantly, knowing that we're going to have to put in a big effort here on Park Place, going into this right-hand turn, and I say, right turn, and I hear behind me, straight! And I was very confused, and I just had like a split second to make a decision. Every single time we have made a right turn there, that is the route. And two guys that didn't make the turn, someone behind me yelling straight. I was confused, everyone was confused. I made the right turn. I think everyone else followed. I went off the gas. Everyone went off the gas, and we were trying to figure out what's going on. Anyway, it was kind of interesting. It was light winds from the south, about 7 miles an hour. So just got a little footage here of Scott bringing the group back together on Allen Heights. And as we make the left-hand turn onto the notorious Parker Road. Now, the best part about this road is that it is almost always in crosswinds. And of course, this time with the wind being from the south, the wind is coming from the right to the left. And here I am, third wheel. The wind's not too bad, but, wind is wind. And so you got this uphill here, and people like to put in good efforts on this particular part of the ride. I've got two teammates here ahead of me, but this ride is not really treated like a race. There aren't team tactics. I'm not gonna let we're not gonna let one of our teammates just roll off the front and for some kind of race tactic, because that's not what it is. It's just a hammerfest. A hammerfest is just putting in hard efforts and doing kind of whatever you want. You want to go off the front, great. You want to put in a huge pull, great. You can do all of that on a hammerfest. We're not really doing group tactics, so a little bit of an uphill here. You may note the gentleman to my right, Alvin, is on a fixed gear bike. 50-13 are his gear ratios, and I don't know that I've ever been on a 50-13. I have been on a fixed gear bike that I borrowed for my training class at the Superdrome, which no longer exists, or rather it exists in storage somewhere in the Dallas area that may one day be resurrected. But pretty impressive that someone can ride that big a gear and not only ride, but ride pretty damn hard and darn hard and impressive. Nice little color scheme on that bike too. We're getting pretty close to the pop ride being mostly in daylight when we have daylight savings time. When that comes, you can see Sam there on the left with the Cadence rider going off the front. And this is not the time one should panic. And I was glad that Alvin in front of me here did not panic. He just kept the pace right where he was, and we'll just pull them back. We'll just use the power of the group. I think we're like 30 guys here to pull them back. And so we can work together to pull back these two very strong riders. Of course, what really sucks is when you go to the front, put in a hard pull with everyone behind you, and then people just start firing off from the back who haven't done any of the work to close the gap, and then you're in trouble because, well, you might not be able to close the gap because of all the work you've done. But that did not happen this time, so good. The crit season is coming up pretty soon, as the weeknight crits will come to be. In the Dallas area, we have the Richardson Tuesday night crit, and we have the Dallas Fair Park crit. There is also a crit in the Fort Worth area. Unfortunately, which was I guess, yeah, 2 years up in McKinney had to come to a close this year due to the loss of the venue on the particular night, Wednesdays, in which it took place. So that's a bit of a bummer, but it is what it is. Still plenty of racing opportunities if you're into crits, and of course, road racing season is already in full swing, and we have some guys here that have done very well in some road races already, in particular the 50 plus category. 50 plus is the new 40 plus. It's kind of interesting. Apparently in the local scene here, 50 plus is getting a lot more entries than the 40 plus. One of the theories here is that the Lance Armstrong generation is now in their 50s, and there just isn't really that many people in the generation before, or after rather. Here is Jorge putting in a big pull after, some guys had rolled off the front going pretty hard, and the guys that were on the front were content to let that go and see what happens, let the group pull it back. In this case, it wasn't a gentle pulling back of the group, or the breakaway if you want to call it that, but rather an aggressive effort by Jorge. Luckily, I was able to get dragged to the front here without doing any work, and once you make it to the front here, that's a prime time for, boom, counterattack. So people have just done a bit of a hard effort. They might not want to do another hard effort, and you go off on the attack. And so, however, they're going into a headwind, just a couple, 3 guys, and we have the force of many. We are legion chasing into this mild headwind in the night. This gentleman in front of me, John, just I guess he got second place at whatever race was last weekend. Was it Pace Bend? And in the 50 plus, and winning the group sprint. And it was kind of funny, the picture of him winning the group sprint was like him 100 yards in front of everybody else. Very talented sprinter, and we're just going to see some of his power here in a minute. That's called foreshadowing. So, did some cuts here, trying to get a little bit of action in here. I was really kind of disappointed in my own effort on this ride, meaning that my legs felt fine, but I just didn't ride hard. I just didn't choose to make efforts. My head was not in the game, maybe partly due to not feeling so well in the past week with a mild cold. But you don't need to hear about my problems. You don't need to hear about my headspace. We'll just watch the ride. And this is a traditional go zone, meaning that guys like to put in a hard effort before we get to FM 544. And we almost always have to stop at FM 544, so it's kind of a natural break point where some guys sprint, and the ones that didn't can easily catch up as everyone else is waiting for the light. So let's see what happens here. Teammate on the right, Eddie, is putting in a hard effort, and he's going to put in a really nice, really great lead out here that's going to accelerate the group. And one thing you really want in a sprint is a really fast pace, at least in a race situation, because if you don't get that fast pace, you're going to get the blob effect. You're going to get everyone in the back moving up, and even though you're in the front, you get swallowed and enveloped, and you don't want that to happen. If you're in good position, you want to be able to stay in good position. You're like 5th wheel. You don't want to end up 25th wheel. So that's why it's really important, fast lead out. Alvin gets on John's wheel here, and he goes first on his fixed gear bike, and I'm going to chase the action a little bit. I'm not on John's wheel, and once they flick over here, I'm just going to give up. And 2 of our very, very strong sprinters here in the Dallas area, at least in our scene, our geriatric scene. When I say geriatric, I mean older than 35. There aren't very many young guys that do this ride, or any of the rides I do for that matter. So I just fast forwarded quite a bit. We're on Renner Road, and again, this is another fast sort of thing where we kind of do a little bit of a sprint into Whole Foods at the end of this. And so I didn't include the earlier footage because nothing happened. It was really quite pedestrian, this ride. It wasn't slow. there weren't huge surges and efforts, and the group was pretty big, so it was hard to move up and move around if, when you have people fanned across the road, three across, and so forth. So I find that when the group is smaller, I tend to be able to ride harder, or I do ride harder. When the group is bigger, it's actually harder to ride with much power. You have to make a more concerted effort. You have to really get in the wind more. You have to, move up many places to get to the front. And also, when you get to the front, you tend not to be able to stay on the front for very long because there's rested guys right behind you that'll just whip right around you and go really fast. So, this wasn't a sprint, really snap and get off the front kind of thing. This was just more of kind of like a fast lead out. I didn't include the rear footage because I'm lazy. There's been budget cuts on the channel. Just can't put in the rear footage budget cuts. Sorry, guys. It actually takes quite a bit of time to put in the rear footage, and it's dark, and frankly, nobody cares. I mean, when it's dark, all you see are these bouncing lights. Sorry about the bouncing footage on the front. My front, whatever it's called, the thing that holds my GoPro, it broke, and I replaced it, and it's not that great, and I've got to actually put pieces of tape in it to make it firm and hold it. It's kind of acting like a pendulum right now, subtly swinging forward and backwards. So that's why you get so much shake right now in this video. But anyway, it was a fun pop ride. Thought I'd just throw in a little bit of commentary here, and don't know how much I'll do that for a while, but maybe yes, maybe no. Catch y'all later. Bye.